Welcome to the London Free Press Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Gilbert. After initially voting not to cut some city services, London city councillors have voted to revisit some service cuts in order to bring down next year's tax hike. Mayor Josh Morgan says he'd like the 2026 tax hike to be less than 5%. And right now it stands at 6.4. So we've got a little ways to go. Today I'm talking with London Free Press City Hall reporter Jack Moulton about what councillors are looking to bring down. Hi, Jack. How are you?
I'm good, Rachel. How are you?
Good, good. So, city councilors have already identified 6 items that they are for sure going to at least look at. These aren't definite cuts yet, but they're going to look at these 6 items to bring the tax hike down. What are those 6 things?
Yeah, so as I believe we've discussed a little bit before, City Hall's trying to get, City Council, both actually, are
Yeah.
trying to get ahead of budget season, which, if you remember in even more previous podcasts, is only about a month long because of the strong mayor powers. So, there were some quibbles by councillors, back in, I believe that would have been February of last year, saying, gosh, I wish I had more time to look at more things. And so
Right.
this is their attempt at doing that. And not only that, but now they're trying to action, if you remember, that strong mayor order that Josh Morgan had of bringing the tax hike below 5%. It currently stands at 6.4%, which is an increase of about $248 against the average assessed value of a home in London, which is from 2015, I believe, and it's $252,000.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
So yeah,
A
big
little out of
difference
date.
in exactly big, even then, big difference in assessed value versus market value. So just to
Absolutely.
clear the air on that,
Okay.
as is routine these days. And so
Sure.
yeah, they're trying to get ahead of the ball, and because of that strong mayor order, staff are bringing forward recommendations for things that could be reduced or cut to
Hmm.
help meet that target. And so there was a big list of them presented to council just last month, and they weren't terribly enthusiastic about many of them. Things like closing the city's 5 remaining waiting pools did not get a great reception.
Hmm.
Things like less road maintenance, sidewalk maintenance, things like that. So, and they voted a couple of those down to not even bother looking at those.
Okay.
To which the mayor and the budget chair were saying, well, we should at least see what these look like first. These are
Sure.
just suggestions of things to look at. And
Okay.
and
So they're
like
really just information gathering at this point.
exactly. And then, the mayor would have the opportunity or not to introduce it in his budget in, I believe, late October. And or council could bring it into the budget if the mayor doesn't have it already, or remove it if he does.
Okay. Okay.
All that being said, they decided to go ahead studying 6 items and then later added three. I can get into those. But
Sure.
right now they're looking at reducing tree planting grants, delaying the resident satisfaction survey, who Londoners may or may not be familiar with that, ranking your biggest priorities and issues in the city and how city staff are performing and their duties, that kind of thing,
Okay.
to every other year as opposed to every year, cutting down the number of internships at City Hall and some back end City Hall stuff like computer software, cutting back on that,
Okay.
but also putting in new streetlights in existing neighborhoods. There's a possibility that the city stops funding those entirely and goes back to a model where property owners in that neighborhood kind of pool their resources together. Um,
Really? Okay. I've
and
never heard of that
also,
happening.
stop sending money to a climate change reserve fund that council set up. They already took a bit out of the annual contribution to that, but now they're basically just talking about taking the rest.
So if they go ahead and cut all of those 6 things, how much does that save?
Not a lot.
Okay.
So, if all of those were implemented, in their entirety, that would be a little over 700 grand in savings.
Mm,
against a $1.4 million budget.
got it.
So that's like less than a tenth of a percentage point, and
Okay.
against that average assessed value of $252,000, that would be about $4 in savings.
For
So
the average homeowner, you'd save $4.
exactly.
Okay. All right. But again, we're just information gathering right now. Now, there's three new things that counselors are going to look at. They initially weren't going to, but now they are. What are those three things?
Yeah, so maybe heeding the advice of the mayor and the budget chair and a couple other counselors, they decided to look at a couple more things, and that was reducing road repairs, stopping the pilot project for having green bins in, apartment buildings and condo buildings and things of that sort. It's mostly curbside right now, but they had this pilot project. But
Okay.
also halting blue box collection for what they call non-eligible sources, which looking into that is, things like small businesses and, businesses run out of your home, that sort of thing. And all of those together would be about $864,000 if they were fully implemented.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
which
even a little bit more than all six of the other things put together, but um so again it would save maybe $4 or $5 on the average homeowner's bill if all of those things were cut
Yeah, in that neighborhood.
ish.
And exactly. And the counselor brought this forward, Corinne Rahman, was talking about maybe not outright cutting these services, these three in particular, but maybe funding them through a reserve fund so they're not directly against, property taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Remains to be seen how that rolls out, since these are ongoing operating expenses. These aren't one-time things.
Sure.
But we'll see. It's worth noting that with every single suggestion for a cut or reduction that were presented to council, the ones they now want to look at or not,
Mm-hmm.
um, all of them brought together would save like 3/10 of a percentage point against the
Okay.
tax hike for next year. And so that's about $12.
Okay.
So,
And we need to cut if we want to get below 5%, at least 1.5%, right?
exactly,
Or
because
1.4.
uh,
Yeah.
1.5, yeah.
Okay. Why did they go back on these three new items? Because they weren't going to look at them, and now they said, "Oh no, let's keep that in there. We'll continue to examine these as options." Why did they bring those back?
Like I said, just more information. Like,
Okay.
the city staff report that outlined some of these things had, some estimates on how much it could save. But really breaking that down over the remainder of this multi-year budget, so next year and 2027, and how that has an impact overall, just getting more detailed information. And,
Yeah.
like I mentioned from Councillor Rahman, potential for maybe partially reducing it or yeah, bringing in alternate sources of funding, that sort of thing.
It does give you some insight into how budget talks happen because it's an ongoing, constant discussion throughout the year, even though most of the main chat is happening in November, December. But they really have to go line by line. Like it's you're really getting into the weeds with a lot of this stuff.
Well, at the very least, that's the case this year, and why they're getting started a bit early to help meet the mayor's goal. Because yeah, it's a bit of an uphill battle. The budget process started off. Not everyone got what they wanted to, and that upset
Yeah.
quite a few agencies. But also part of that is looking at City Hall's own books. I should mention that city staff have already found about, and this is an early number, they stressed about $6 million in savings through just right sizing, which is a little less than a percentage point. A percentage point is about roughly $8 million or so.
Okay.
There is some work underway, and that's
Mhm.
not to mention, the mayor and the budget chair are asking, city-funded boards and agencies to look into their books as well as part of this. The city can't do it alone.
Right.
And they're asking any city-funded agencies like transit, like police, like the library,
Yeah.
to come back with 1.5% in savings against their budget.
Mm.
And granted, that's not like an absolute. The mayor and budget chair have said, that's not going to be possible for each and every one, and especially that goes for smaller agencies like Museum London or the
Yeah.
Arts Council, things like that. Uh, the problem so far is that none of these agencies really have a lot of room to cut anymore or to defer projects or anything of that sort.
Hmm.
For instance, the transit authorities already hiked fares last year, and that affected their ridership.
Okay.
And now they have the fallout from enrollment cuts at Fanshawe and how that goes against sort of their student pass revenue.
Yep.
Just this week, letters from the health unit and Museum London. Museum London especially said, since we didn't get the money we needed at the beginning of the budget, we've
Hmm.
already had to, make some trims to our staff. And
Hmm.
any more, we're going to have to reduce our hours and cut even more staff. And the health unit came out and said, we have a forecast of how much, we're expecting the city to grant us in budget increases. And if they don't meet this, if we cut 1.5% from the city's contribution, that's going to leave us with $1 million shortfall next year.
Yeah. So it's
It's a
a
tall
tough
order.
balance. Yeah, a tall order and a tough balance for City Hall to, ask that of all their agencies and then get the costs down to something that's affordable for Londoners. Okay, so these budget talks are again long and ongoing. So what is going to happen next? What are the next steps with budget?
Yeah, so they have one last meeting, one of these sort of early meetings of the budget committee, which is every member of council, next week, June 11th. And
Okay.
so they're going to hear from the Health Unit and Museum London. And that's also going to be the sort of last chance, way ahead of time for councillors to suggest any cuts they might be thinking of or are exploring.
Okay.
And there are a couple in there, but then it takes a bit of a break and the formal budget process kicks off. The mayor will release his budget in late October,
Okay.
to which there will be a couple weeks to sort of process that. Councilors will be holding town halls. City Hall will be hosting sort of pop-up events at like community centers and things of that nature to get people to weigh in.
Okay.
There will be another formal public input meeting at City Hall, like we've discussed before. And then 2 days of budget deliberations, I believe, mid to late November. And then all goes well, the mayor doesn't veto, we'll have a budget update for 2026 at the end of November.
Okay. And the mayor's goal is again under 5%. Right now we're sitting at 6.4, so little ways to go.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Jack. I'm sure we're going to follow all of your stories on this at lfpress.com because I know there's a lot more to come, but we're glad to have your expertise today. Thank you.
Thank you.